Welcome into another special edition of the Fast Lane. Trey Lyle here with you, joined by the site manager for Cardiac Hill. It is the SB Nation site covering all things Pitt, Michael Parra. Michael, thanks so much for joining me this week. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing great over here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. Well, let's jump right into it. Pitt coming off of a disappointing performance against Georgia Tech, who just fired Jeff Collins. How has the team reacted to that loss? Obviously, it's definitely it was a big upset, and the Coastal is starting to deliver the Coastal things in the last season of the Coastal.
Yes, it is. So Pat Narduzzi spoke to the media the other day, and he is just locked in and focused on this upcoming week. They're going to use it as motivation, and they are fully in the mindset that this week they're going to go 1-0. So they're just going to try and do their best to put it behind them, as much as us in the media and as much as the fans aren't ready to let that go yet. Because looking back, it was the third biggest upset in ACC in the last 25 years, coming in as a 22-point favorite. And the offense just did not look sharp. Keaton Slovis definitely just did not look good. He did not look crisp. He didn't look like he had trust in his receivers. So there's a lot that Pitt has to overcome and improve in this game against West Virginia.
Talking about that Pitt offense, obviously you lose Mark Whipple and you lose Kenny Pickett and you lose Jordan Addison. Those are three massive holes. You try to fill it with Keaton Slovis and you try to fill it with parts and pieces, but obviously it's been hard to fill. How has this offense looked? Obviously, it's hard to repeat the success from last season, but it seems to have been very much stalled out as the season's gone on.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to replace a first round quarterback and what arguably might be the best wide receiver in the country when it comes to Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. They've tried. They've actually relied more on the run game this year. Israel Bandakanda has been pretty solid in his rushing attempts, and he's actually averaged 5.5 yards a carry, 6 touchdowns. But there's just a disconnect. The offense really hasn't found their rhythm. They just haven't found their identity yet. You would have hoped to have seen that in their tune-up games that they had against a Rhode Island, a West Virginia. But unfortunately, when Keaton Slovis actually went out during that Tennessee game, it kind of just set the team back behind even more when they were really just trying to establish a rhythm and an identity. The hope is against a Virginia Tech team that just didn't look the best, to put it mildly, against North Carolina, especially against the air. The Pitt Panthers are hoping that they can establish that identity and that rhythm with Keaton Slovis this week.
Yeah, you sort of touched on it. You could talk about, these are very much like-minded teams in terms of they have really good defenses and their offenses have not looked that great. Virginia Tech to a different degree. I mean, you have to be one of the worst in the country when you only score 10 points against a North Carolina defense that does not look great. So going to the defensive side of the ball, which has looked, pretty good this season. They held Tennessee to only 34 points, which is the lowest that a team has allowed this season, which is saying something given how efficient Tennessee's offense has looked. And so this defense has still been a Pat Narduzzi, aggressive defense. So defensively, they have to still feel pretty good where they're at.
They do feel good. Eric Howlett has been playing very, very good football, cornerback. He missed about 3 to 4 interceptions last game that really could have tipped the favor to Pitt and could have changed the outcome. And Kalijah Cansey you can't say enough about Cansey. He's continued to be one of the most impressive interior defensive linemen, generating pressures at a high rate. They got Balalando back, so with Cansey should form a formidable 1-2 punch. The downside is Virginia Tech, you have to give credit. They have not allowed very many sacks so far this year. So it'll be a test for the Panthers. If they can control the line of scrimmage, control the defensive narrative, it'll give them a chance here in this game.
Moving back to the offensive side of the ball, the big matchup, Keaton Slovis has flashed some, in this Pitt offense. You could argue maybe if Pitt called more passing plays that it could get Slovis more in a rhythm. But everyone knows that, Pat Narduzzi doesn't want to do that. He's very old school minded. Do you think this team is lacking aggression that could kind of, I don't want to say solve their issues offensively, but maybe just, you know, give your quarterback who you brought in a chance to showcase his talent?
I did think that initially, especially going back to the Rhode Island game. When you have an opponent like that, you really want to be able to tune up and practice your offensive attack. But that was the Izzy Abanikanda show in that game. And then in Georgia Tech, when that game started, it looked like they did try, but they just could not get anything going. The receivers as well, there was a couple drops. You could tell they're missing everyone's going to miss a player at the talent level of Jordan Addison. But there just has not been a rhythm that we would have hoped to establish. So we would look for that, but I'm not sure Frank Signetti is going to have this. I would say more of like confidence in Keaton Slovis that they need to establish. Because there was times when you would see players running through the end zone and the fans were sitting there screaming, throw it, throw it. So there's confidence issues there that unfortunately are going to be harder to do now in ACC play. I know ACC Coastal isn't the strongest division in college football, but
It's the
it's
funnest.
still harder to do it when you had that opportunity against West Virginia and Rhode Island and Western Michigan and just kind of failed to do it there.
Looking at the game again, I know the team is, but the real difference is the 3 turnovers. That ultimately is what cost them that game. They outgained him, time possession. They slightly lost that battle, had more first downs. Like they kind of dominated that game against a Georgia Tech team that is frankly not that good. Um, they're coming in this week with a Virginia Tech team that does not look great, and so, but they've shown an ability to get turnovers, but they're facing, Grant Wells turned the ball over. So how important would it be just to win the turnover battle? Is that something in which the coaching staff has talked about, like, hey, if we win the turnover battle, that frankly hurt them against Tennessee as well. If we win the turnover battle, we should be able to control this game pretty easily.
That's what they think, especially against Wells, who I think he has 6 interceptions now on the season. For a team that, like I said, did drop and miss about 4 or 5 turnover opportunities that were very crucial. Now, the only downside here is Georgia Tech really, I know the box score looked a certain way, but Georgia Tech really was able to grind that game, especially in the second half. Pitt just had a hard time stopping the run. The turnovers really, really did Pittsburgh in. And the defense that held up in the first half eventually couldn't keep that level of play. And I actually wrote on Cardiac Hill. That's actually one of my concerns going into this game is if Virginia Tech can dominate the line of scrimmage, if Virginia Tech can look how they looked in the first week establishing their running game, it gives me a little bit of concern that Pitt might not be able to hold up. But Pittsburgh knows at the end of the day that they do feel that they have the talent to come in here and win this game handily. They just got to gel, and it comes back again. They have to identify their offensive identity today. They really got to get in there and make sure that the game plan they're installing every week that they can go out there and execute when it comes to Saturday.
What are a couple keys you want to see this Pitt team have as a quote unquote takeaway from if they were able to get the win or in this game? What is like the 2 things you want to leave at Couture Stadium, which is weird to say now?
I know, I know.
It's Heinz Field. It's
Yeah,
Heinz Field. Like the same thing
I'm
with
not changing it.
Syracuse. Syracuse is the Carrier Dome. It's the Carrier Dome. So what are a couple things you want to just see this team kind of execute in this game?
I would like to see Keaton Slovis really establish a rhythm and command of this offense. It doesn't have to be hitting for big plays. I just want to see sustained drives from Keaton Slovis, and I want to see his confidence in his receivers. Offensive line as well. This was an offensive line that looked really good last season. They returned all 5 starters, so there was a lot of good feelings when it came to the offensive line, and it just has not looked the same this year. Granted, it is a new quarterback, so there is a little bit of adjustment period with that. But it's keeping Keaton Slovis protected as well. There's a lot of times where Georgia Tech was able to pressure Keaton. So if they're able to maintain and win the line of scrimmage and give confidence in Keaton Slovis, we will feel good for the remainder of the games going forward.
Well, the spread in this game is 14.5 towards the Pittsburgh Panthers. Over under 42.5. Probably feel most confident about that under. Do you have a pick for this one? Do you think the Hokies can keep it close, or do you expect Pitt to kind of dominate?
I do expect the Hokies to cover the spread, especially at 14.5. Pitt overall has not been good at covering these larger spreads, especially with the way the offense has been playing. They want to run the ball more. They want to use Vincent Davis. They want to use Abandakanda. So that's not going to bode well for covering a spread like 14.5, especially when you look at a Virginia Tech side as well that would like to establish the run and really kind of control the pace on their own. I do feel Pitt can win this game. I'm less confident. I'm more shell shocked because of I can't get this upset last week out of my head. But at the end, I do feel just of what I've seen last week with Pitt, even though it didn't look great, the defense played lights out until they just were gassed. And then I just can't get the Virginia Tech North Carolina game out of my head either. So I would say maybe more like a 10-point win for Pitt, but I'm not super confident in them covering the spread.
Well, Michael, I appreciate you joining me this week. How can listeners connect with you and maybe learn more about this Pitt team?
So Twitter is a big way to reach me. Muggsy Parra. Muggsy is just because I am short and I love basketball. So shout out to Muggsy Bogues. And Cardiac Hill, cardiachill.com, part of the SB Nation site. That's where we'll run all our game previews, all our game breakdowns, and where people can get to know and learn this Pitt football team.
Thanks so much for joining me, man.
Thank you.
As always, you can connect with us at Trey Lyle VT. Connect with us at Fastlane, Edlane, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Thank you so much for listening to this special edition of the Fastlane.